All right, what is up, you guys? It's me, Vincent, back at it again with another video. Now before I get into what this video is about, I want to share with y'all a couple updates about the channel. Now I wanted to film a separate video of just explaining these updates, but I felt it more fitting to do it now. Since you know I didn't feel like making another video, but you know, I'm just gonna give you all the updates now. Before we get into what this video is actually gonna be about. Now, you can already guess what it's gonna be about, judging by the Wikipedia article down at the bottom here. But first update I want to get out of the way is that I got those videos that I was talking about organizing into playlists. In my last video, I finally got them organized. I've got one for the Tuesday Talks, one for my history videos, one for the My Strange Addictions, and one for the People to Walmart. So 4 playlists in total. If you search up my channel on your top search bar, if you're doing this on your phone, if you search it up on your top search bar and you click on my channel icon and you go to playlist, you'll see these playlists and you can view them at your leisure. Another thing, actually, I was about to say the other thing is, but that's about it. That's just about the only update. Another thing is, well, the only update regarding the channel in terms of, just not involving videos, but involving things that I'm going to do with the channel. But tomorrow I plan on uploading a video titled "The Hydrogen Horror." I can't speak today. And just in case you didn't hear that, I'm going to repeat it again. The Hydrogen Horror. Okay? So I'm not going to tell you anything about that one, but you'll see that tomorrow, hopefully, when I upload it. But if you need to view any of my other updates regarding the channel, I've got a video about that that I posted about a month ago. But anyway, I've been talking for about 3 minutes and 40 seconds and counting now. So let's get into the actual meat of the video. Let's get into what I'm going to be talking about and covering today in this new history video. Now, I've done a lot of ship videos on this channel so far, about 4 in total, and this is my 5th one. This one in question is going to be about a smaller, less well-known vessel called the RMS Carpathia, the Royal Mail Steamer Carpathia, which she's not famous for sinking in World War One. She's not famous for carrying American and Canadian expeditionary forces during the final year of World War One. She's not famous for that. She's famous for rescuing 700 shaken up and sad people. And I'll get more into that later. But let's start with her construction and her eventual buying out and being sold to Cunard Line. So around the time that she was built, around 1909, 1908, 1908 to 1909, somewhere around there, she was built by this smaller, less well-known company called Hudson and Blard. Now, Hudson and Blard, they were this smaller company, so they knew that they weren't going to be well off because they were smaller, and they knew that they'd be bought out by these bigger companies. Those companies being Cunard, White Star Line, a couple of the German lines, the Italian lines, just those main 4 competitors, those guys who were building the really big and really fast and really luxurious ships. Hudson and Bard knew that they'd probably be bought out one day. So what they did is they sold the Carpathia to Cunard Line, which Cunard Line, like I said in a previous video, is still a functioning shipping company today. It's not an ocean liner company. It's a shipping company. It's a shipping passenger company that is still in operation today. They still have many ships sailing, and you can actually cruise on a lot of these. Granted, the cruises cost an exorbitant amount of money. But yes, you can still sail on these ships if you wish. So Hudson and Blard, I should say, not Bard, Blard. Hudson and Blard sell this ship to Cunard, and they run it all throughout from 1909 to 1914 when she eventually sunk. Now, I only put four screenshots of the ship in here because her story, it's short, it's sweet, and it's heartfelt. Because, she's only really well known for one thing, and I'll get into that later. But, you know, um, this segment right here is just going to focus on being sold to Cunard and doing her rounds around Southampton to New York to Glasgow to all those places during her normal route with Cunard during her passenger service. And, well, here we have a picture of her right after she arrived in New York. Woohoo! She just arrived in New York. Now, you might be saying, yeah, she arrived in New York. It was probably a very great trip. They sailed from Southampton to New York. Their passengers got off safely. No. This picture was taken right after the Carpathia docked in New York, and they let off the 700 surviving passengers of the Titanic, mostly being women, children, and some men. Very few third-class passengers survived. Very few of the crewmen survived. One of the victims was Captain Edward J. Smith, who unfortunately went down with his ship. Some of the second class survived, and most of the first and second class men didn't make it. One of the four of the most famous casualties of the Titanic is Father Thomas Biles, who sat on the bow until the ship sank, consoling and calming passengers with his teachings and preachings. He had his Bible in his hand, and he was very, very shaken up as the ship was sinking, but he kept praying. He kept reading his Bibles, and all these people are just crowded around him, and they are just listening to his words and hoping, praying that somebody makes it to them. Then they've got Archibald Major Butt. Yes, his last name was Butt. He was a British, a Royal Army major in the Boer War, which is kind of a well-known war. Most of the White Star Line vessels that started service in the 1900s served in the Boer War as troop ships, but he served in the Boer War as a major. He got out, sailed on the Titanic. He was going to New York, and he unfortunately died. The third one is John Jacob Astor. He was one of the richest men during that year, during 1912. He was one of the richest men in Britain at the time, and his wife survived, but he unfortunately did not. Another one, which I don't remember their names, but it was an older couple, and they were first-class passengers, and for them being old, they were very wealthy. And it was something Goodman. It was something, not Goodman, but it's on the tip of my tongue. I don't remember their names, but they were an older couple, so the crew were a bit more lenient with them. Officer Wilde, the guy in charge of the lifeboats, Officer Wilde was going to let him go onto a lifeboat together, but the lady, the guy's wife, was like, no. Look, wherever you go, I will go. We need to stay on this ship together. If you go, I go. We're going to go back to our cabin, and we're going to go to sleep. So they went back to their cabin, and they proceeded to lay down and go to sleep as the ship was sinking. So very, very sad indeed. But like I said earlier, this picture was taken right after the Carpathia docked in New York, with the 700 Titanic passengers, and it took them about a month to go home because of just the congestion in the city, the traffic, the amount of photographs being taken of the passengers, the amount of interviews being taken. It was just so messy that it took most of the survivors who had to ride on trains and boats back to Britain. It took them about a month to get back home. The crew, on the other hand, the crew of the Titanic, the surviving officers, which there were only about seven surviving officers, they they were put on board the RMS Aquantitania, which is another ship that I will be going over. Um, they were put onto the RMS Aquantitania, and they were sent back to Britain to be not interrogated, but to be inquired about what happened during the night of April 14th, 1912. Um, Now, the inquiries went well. A lot of people were blamed for the disaster. A lot of people weren't. But yeah, it took these passengers and the crew about a month to get home. And yeah, there's not really much information regarding the crew or the passengers that I can share after what happened to them after they got off the boat. All I know is that it took them a month to get home. They got home, they went to the inquiries, and everything went well from there. Now, I'm going to talk about the crew of the Carpathia for a minute. Um, Now, sorry, I had to pause. My brother's screaming. My brother's playing his game, and like he's really into it. So please forgive me if I keep pausing. Now, there's only one member of the Carpathia's crew that I'm really going to go over, considering I don't know much about the other crew members. Now, the captain of the RMS Carpathia during the sinking of the Titanic, his name was Arthur Rostron. Now, his nickname was the Electric Spark by the crew because when his crew saw him, he wasn't like Captain Smith. He wasn't. Now, Captain Smith was stern, but he was fair. But Arthur Rostrom, he was more laid back. Every picture that you see of this guy, he's either got his foot propped up on the stairwell, one arm on the railing, just really swagger. And the other photos are him smiling with his hands in his pockets. Like, he was just a really, really, sparky guy. He had a lot of energy. And for him being an older guy, when his crew saw him, he was always smiling. He was always, ready to go on this voyage, all of that stuff. And when the Titanic sank, he was ready to go. He was ready to steam his ship as fast as it could go to get to the wreck site to rescue however many people needed to be rescued. In this case, it was 701. Now, I'm going to get, whoa, sorry. I'm going to get a bit into more of the rescue effort that the Carpathia played here, which is why she's so famous. Now, the Californian, which was a ship built by another company. I don't know much about that ship, but that ship's wireless operator was using his headset, and it's late at night. It's around 1 in the morning. So Harold Bride and Jack Phillips, which are the operators for the RMS Titanic, they're both working hard to try and get these personal messages from the passengers out. So the wireless operator for the Californian, he comes over on the radio to try and warn them about the ice, about the immense ice field and all the icebergs around the area, which certainly would have saved the Titanic. Now, Harold Bride, who was working that night, Jack Phillips had taken his leave, and he was taking a break in the same room that Jack Phillips was working in. And they were both kind of joking back and forth about, no, you're going to get to stay up all night to get these messages sent out. No, you're going to get to stay up all night. And they're just going back and forth, kind of bickering with each other a little bit. And then the Californian's radio operator comes over their macaroni wireless set, and he's like, hey, we've got some ice in the area. Y'all need to slow your speed. Like, y'all need to slow down to at least 18 knots. slow down, keep that speed, and go south. Because if you go south, the ice is going to melt quicker there. So Jack Phillips is obviously annoyed because he's already overwhelmed that he's got to get all these ice messages out. Not all the ice messages, but all of the personal messages out. So he tells the Californian's operator to shut up. Shut up. Keep out. I'm busy. I'm working Cape Race. Because Jack Phillips, he was sending all of these messages back to not Cape Canaveral. Why did I say Cape Canaveral? Not Cape Canaveral, but Cape Race in Nova Scotia. And he was obviously overwhelmed, fatigued, so he just tells the Californian's wireless operator to shut up. To just shut up, I'm working Cape Race, don't bother me. So the Californian's wireless operator shuts down, and the Californian is still stopped. And they're right up against this ice field, and they won't be able to move until morning. So he shuts down, and he goes to bed not knowing. None of the crew know. They know the Titanic is close. They know that she has hit an iceberg, but they do not go to help because they've got that ice field in the way. Now around the time that the Titanic is really beginning to sink, the Californian still is not able to move. It's still immobile. They still won't be able to move until morning, so they're not able to go help the Titanic. So about that time, that the Titanic really starts to sink, and the passengers really start to be afraid, and the passengers really start to realize, hey, we're really going down. Like this is serious. So around this time, Captain Smith is urging them to use the newer SOS signal. So they start using that, and they contact the closest ship, which is the not the closest ship, but they contact the next closest ship, which is the HMS Carpathia, because the Californian, as stated earlier, has shut down. Its wireless operator has gone to bed, so the Californian is not sending or receiving ice warnings or distress signals. So Harold Bride and Jack Phillips contact the next closest ship, the Carpathia. And the Carpathia picks up, and it's able to come to the Titanic. It's able under its own power to come to the Titanic as fast as it can, which is about 17 knots if they really push the engines. Now, compared to the Titanic speed, which was 26 knots, the Carpathia would take a little bit longer to reach the Titanic. So Harold Bride comes up to the bridge, not the desk, but the bridge, and he taps the captain on his shoulder, and the captain turns around really quick. Captain Smith turns around really quick, and he's like, all right, what's the situation? How far away is the Carpathia? And Harold Bride looks at him and goes, it's going to be here in about 4 hours. And Captain Smith whips his head around, and he's like, 4 hours? You're telling me that the next closest ship is going to get here in 4 hours? And Harold Bride looks at him, nods his head really slow, and goes, yes, sir, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but the Carpathia will not be able to get here for another 4 hours. And Captain Smith sinks his head down, and he's like, okay, we'll launch distress rockets. We'll do everything that we can. We'll keep the lights on. We'll try. So Captain Smith orders the electricians, Mr. Kelly. I don't know his first name, but he orders the chief electrician, the chief engineer, and the chief stoker, which is Joseph Bell and Fred Barrett, respectively. He orders them to keep the lights on until the very last minute, which was around 1:54 a.m. So, around the time that the Titanic goes down, the Carpathia finds out that, they're not getting any more messages from the Titanic, because the Titanic has sent messages to the Carpathia until the power had gone out on the Titanic, until the wires had short-circuited on the Titanic due to the salt water, and until the power went completely out. So Harold Bride and Jack Phillips leave the ship with Jack surviving the sinking, and Harold unfortunately dying from hypothermia. So, Arthur, so not the wireless operator, not the captain, but one of the crew members finds out that the Titanic is no longer receiving, is no, hold on, I messed up my words. So, one of the crew members finds out that they're no longer getting messages from the Titanic, which is a bad thing because they know the ship is sinking. They know the ship is in a really bad state. So he goes down to the captain's quarters and he wakes up the captain and he tells the captain, "We're not getting any more messages from the Titanic. What should we do?" And the captain gets up. He gets dressed really quick. He goes up onto the bridge and he's like, "All right, if you're not getting any more messages, she's sunk. Turn off all the lights. Every single light on the ship was turned off." Now keep in mind that this ship was run by electric lights and steam turbines, run by two steam turbines. It had two twin screws. So it was run by two steam turbines. So Arthur orders all the lights to be cut, extra coal to be pumped into the boilers, to be shoveled into the boilers, and for the ship to make speed as fast as it can. And the ship was basically turned into a hospital ship at this point. So they're going around 17 knots, 18 knots at this point. So they're really trying hard to get to the Titanic wreck site. And they finally do. And they see there were around 20 lifeboats in the water. All the lifeboats from the Titanic were launched successfully. So they saw around 20 lifeboats on the horizon, minus the collapsible lifeboats stored on the officers' quarters of the Titanic. So, the Carpathia gets there, they stop, and they start picking up the lifeboats, one by one. And the passengers are really, really scared, and a bunch of the sailors and a bunch of the officers from the Carpathia try to comfort them. And, a couple of the passengers are just in denial. Some of them can't believe that their husbands are dead. Some of them can't believe that their daughters, their sons, their fathers, their mothers are dead. They can't believe it, and they are in total denial, in total shock that their relatives, that the people that they have known and loved for so long, are dead and a mile under the ocean, and they cannot believe it. They are just distraught, and they don't know whether they're going to be able to make it to New York on this smaller boat or not. And a couple of the crew members sit with them and they give them warm drinks and warm blankets, and they tell them everything is going to be fine. Everything is going to be okay. We are so sorry for your losses, but everything is going to be fine, you know. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. We're going to try. We're going to make it, you know. So they get to New York, and it's raining at this point. So they get to New York, and it's a very dreary, gloomy New York morning. So, very few third-class passengers, like I said, survived. They had a couple, and it was said that when they saw the Statue of Liberty, that hope that they felt on the Titanic, that when they were going, like when they were on the Titanic, that hope that they felt when they would finally get to see the Statue of Liberty, and they would finally get to see America, and have that dream come true. It happened on the Carpathia that night. That rainy, dreary morning. They looked up at the Statue of Liberty, and they realized, yeah, most of my friends, family, kin might be dead, but, you know, me, all these other people, these 700 people, we made it. We made it to America. And we are here to start new lives. And that's what they did. But I've already told y'all about, you know, what happened afterwards. But afterwards, after they got to New York. But this picture was taken right after she got to New York. And, yeah. That's what she's famous for. She's famous for rescuing the 701 passengers of the Titanic. That's just about the only famous thing that she did. Now here, you may be looking at this and you may be wondering, Vincent, this isn't the Carpathia. It doesn't look like the Carpathia. It's a sinking ship, and with the Carpathia being kind of as famous as it was, I didn't think that it would sink. Well, it did. So during World War One, so in 1916, so the Britannic has become a hospital ship. The Olympic has become an armed merchant cruiser, and the Carpathia is tasked with transporting U.S. and Canadian expeditionary forces to Glasgow, to England, and sometimes to America. So she would still run her normal route, but only to take troops home on leave. Now, because she was transporting troops, and because the troops were armed, and because the ship was also armed for self-defense against U-boats, she obviously was a target. And she was, unfortunately, torpedoed. So she wasn't transporting any troops. The ship was empty, and they were actually going to unload troops. So pick up troops to take them out to the front, out to the front lines. But she was torpedoed once, and that one hit did it. She sunk fairly quickly, and most of her crew, minus six crew members, three being engine workers and three being electricians. Minus those six crew members, most of them made it out. So she rescued passengers from the Titanic, and she was sunk in World War One. And this is a picture of a wreck. And if you really feel brave enough, you can get with a diving team and you can look up her location, and you can actually go see the wreck. But this is it. Now, obviously, it's been in the ocean for 100 years, so it obviously doesn't look like this anymore. It's probably just a rust stain on the bottom of the ocean. But, yeah. This is her wreck. And if any of my divers are out here watching this video and you live in Ireland or you live in Europe, feel free to go dive to this wreck. I mean, it looks pretty cool, so I would encourage it. So, but yeah, I have stretched this video out a long way. It's like 27 minutes long, 28 minutes long now and counting. So I'm going to end the video here. I hope that you guys learned something, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I love you all. I will see y'all on the flip side. Goodbye.